Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the Craftsgiving mini-series. My name is Leah, and I am your moderator today. Craftsy, the National Quilter Circle, and Creative Crochet Corner have all teamed up to provide a full week of live demonstrations and a bundle of 5 free fall-themed patterns. You'll want to get your downloads, and you can get the free patterns by clicking the link in the description. Now, once you get to the patterns page, make sure to click the picture of the project that you are looking to download. And then once you enter your email, you will immediately receive your free download of that project. Now, every day this week, we've got a different project and a new instructor that will be streaming live as we quilt, sew, crochet, cook, and decorate cookies. You will get step-by-step demonstration of all of these fun fall projects. And of course, if you have any questions during the event, that is what I am here for. Please leave your comments in the blue chat box below or in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. I'll keep an eye on all of the questions as they come in. If you've been with us before, you know that any project-specific questions I will slide in any breaks that Sue takes when we're going through the demonstration. And of course, leave some general comments and questions as well, because whenever we have time, we love to get into some of the more general questions. So that being said, it is time to officially introduce today's instructor. Sue O'Veary-Pruitt joins us today. Hello, Sue. How are you?
Hello, Leah. I am wonderful. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited about today's project. I'm hoping that you can give us a brief intro about what we're doing today before we get into the steps.
Absolutely. Well, today we are making the chenille leaf trivet, and it is a dimensional leaf that is going to have channels of fluffiness. And on the back side, it's just plain, but it looks like a leaf, but it could be a trivet or a mug rug, or it could even be a pot holder, and it's going to be a lot of fun to make.
All right, well, I can tell you, Sue, we have a couple people already in the comments box excited for today's project. So I would love to open the floor for you to get us started right from the top with today's project. I'll jump in if there are any questions, but also if you get to any pause points that are pretty natural, you can let me know if you're looking for a question and we'll dig into the comments box.
Okay. That sounds really good. All right, well, let's go to the overhead camera, and then I can go ahead and start showing all of the different steps. Okay, the first thing is that there is an actual pattern piece that everyone's going to want to go ahead and download. And it's the last page, I believe, of the instructions. And all it is just a leaf shape. So that's one thing you're going to need. You're also going to need all your pieces of material. And of course, everything's going to be listed in the instructions. But I'm going to go over a couple of materials really quick. There are 2 different types of cotton, and we're just going to refer to them as printed and solid today. Now, of the solid, you're going to need 2 pieces. And this is just regular, good old-fashioned 100% cotton fabric. Now, this rust solid is what you're going to be seeing on the back here. And also, you'll see right here, it's kind of on the bottom side of all of the chenille pieces. So there's 2 of those. And then there's going to be 3 of the print. And the reason that we're going to be using 3 is because that's how many layers it takes to create that fluffy chenille look. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the batting. Now, if you want this to just be a regular, let's say a pot holder, you're going to want something that's going to be a little more durable. But if it's just going to be a mug rug that you're just going to put maybe a cup of coffee on or cookies, then you could use any kind of batting. But when it comes to the batting that's going to protect your hands when you're touching hot items, you're going to want to use a thermal batting. And in that case, the best thing to do is wherever you're purchasing it from is just ask for a thermal or heat-resistant batting. But it's pretty obvious when you look at it. You can kind of see it reminds me of like astronaut, material or something, but it's got a silver look to it. Usually it's silver on one side, and on the other side looks like white or a regular kind of batting. Now here's the thing that we're going to talk about today. Wherever that silver is where you want it to be touching the hot item. So in this case, if I was going to use this as a trivet where we put something hot on top of it, I would want the silver to be facing this way. Same thing if I'm going to use it as a pot holder and I'm going to be grabbing, I'd want the metal side that's going to protect our hands to be facing out. So once we have all of our, and the last thing is we're going to need a little piece of ribbon. Now you can use whatever size you'd like. I used a 1/2 inch wide grosgrain ribbon. All right, so the next thing is you're going to be doing some cutting. Is there any questions? We can go ahead and ask that
There's
now.
one here from Brenda. Brenda was thinking that we would be doing binding. Is that not the case for this project?
No, this is a completely raw edge chenille trivet. Yep, no binding involved.
All right, I'm not sure if that's good news or bad news for Brenda, but it's a binding-free project.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey, it's something new to learn. Okay, so the next thing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's it for now.
All right, very good. Well, the next thing that they're going to do is we're going to need to cut out 3 of the top, which is going to be the printed material, and then also 1 of the batting. And remember, we want that silver facing up. Now, from that step, the next thing we're going to do is actually put the 3 printed pieces aside, and now we're going to open up the 2 solid pieces. Now remember, the 2 solid pieces are going to be what's on the very back and then kind of hidden between the printed and that batting. So this is going to be really fun. We're going to start stitching here now. We're going to place our leaf cutout of the batting with the silver side facing up, and then we're going to have it sandwiched in between the 2 wrong sides of the solid. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get a marking pen and we're going to get our straight pins. And we're going to pin through all of the layers. So again, we've got the silver side of the batting, right side facing up, in between the wrong sides of the solid color. And now we're going to just pin through all the layers, but we're really focusing on making sure that we catch that batting. And then the last thing we're going to do down at the bottom is we're going to add our little loop that creates the bottom of the leaf. And we're just very simply going to fold it in half, crisscrossing over top the 2 raw edges. We're going to open up the bottom of our leaf, and we're just going to find the center. And right there, we're going to put those 2 raw edges, and it's about a 1/2 inch or so. And it really depends on what you're wanting. If you would want a longer loop than what's listed in the instructions, but if you're going to go just exactly as the instructions, we're just going to crisscross the 2 raw edges inside, and then we're going to close it down and we're going to pin it. Our next thing to do is actually stitch around the leaf shape, and there's 2 ways you can do this. First is you could grab your pattern piece and you could just trace around it, or you could also use your marking pen and you just could kind of feel where that batting is. I've done both of them. I've made several of these, and I kind of found that this was the easier way. All right, while I'm marking this, Leah, is there any questions?
We do have a few. One is about the batting. Specific question about brand, I believe. So Diane wants to know if you can use Insulin Bright for the batting.
Yep. There's Insul Bright. There's one by Bosel. I believe that C&T Publishing also has one. There's several, and I've tried them all, and I think they're all fantastic.
All right, so feel free to grab whatever you have available, what you can get your hands on, it sounds like. And then this next one is for, especially when you take this over to the machine, we have a question coming in from C. Lombard. They want to know what size or type of needle you're using for this project.
Oh, very good question. While I am marking, I'll talk about that. I actually have this aside, and let me see if this will zoom in. I've got just a Schmetz Universal size 8012 needle. Now, if they're going to be doing an excessive amount of sewing, then I would probably recommend using a quilting needle, the same size. But honestly, the amount that we're going to be doing, it'll be just fine with the Universal. And when I say an excessive amount, like if you were going to make an entire quilt of chenille over top of even this batting or a traditional batting, when you're doing a lot of it, the eye of the needle for a quilting needle is shaped so that it can go over, I'm trying to think how to describe it. The eye of the needle is a little elongated, allowing the needle to go up and down faster. But for this, we're not going to be stitching a whole lot. Now the next step is actually going to be stitching around this. If we catch the batting, that's fine. But remember, when we were marking, we're actually marking on the outside of it. So we're not going to technically be stitching on the batting at this time. So if there's no other questions, or go ahead if there is, Leah.
We don't have any more questions. Just a suggestion that these can also be plain decorations. So if you want to hang these up, it looks like we've got some ideas for that too.
Oh, definitely. Oh, I'd love to see pictures of that. Yes. Okay, so our next step is to go to the sewing machine. We have a regular straight stitch. Our length is 2.5 to 3. And then that's pretty much it. We've got our universal needle in, and the thread color. I do want to talk about this. The thread color, I would recommend that you match your material. However, today and also in the instructions, you'll see that I used, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. It's white. But if you're making these, and you're going to want to match the thread color. And it does say that in the instructions. All right, so let's go ahead, and all we're doing is stitching all the way around the leaf. And just as a friendly reminder, as you're sewing, you always want to make sure that you remove your straight pins. It's a good idea to always avoid stitching over straight pins. And when I'm finished sewing, I'll explain why. It seems as if my bobbin is giving me a trouble right here. So Leah, we're going to talk about putting in a bobbin for a minute.
This is a theme this week, Sue. We had this happen yesterday as well. The bobbins just are staging a little protest this week.
That's what well, I tell you. Well, you know how it is when you're in front of somebody and you're showing them something, that's when your machine decides to not work at its best. Okay, I've changed, and you know what? You can actually see right here where it got a little gobble. Hey, it got gobbled up. Gobble, gobble. It's the turkey theme. I try to remind myself that when my machine is misbehaving, it's most likely something I've told it to do. It's doing what I've asked it to do. So if I've put the bobbin in wrong, then it's doing exactly what I asked it to do, to jam. But you'll notice all I'm doing is stitching around the outside of that batting. I'm following the shape of my leaf pattern. Now, hey, I wanted to mention too that we're doing a leaf, but I want everyone at home to be thinking of other shapes. I saw yesterday's project was an acorn. How about making a matching little leaf trivet to go with that potholder? But you could also basically take the shapes of any of these things, acorn, a little squirrel. Maybe when we get into the like more Christmas, you could do a Christmas tree. But once you learn this technique, you can do this with any shape. And now, of course, I wanted to also mention that next to my sewing machine today, I have a little paper bag. These are like those gift bags that you get from the dollar store. And I've got it taped to the side of my machine here. So when I have my threads and I'm finished, I'm not going to throw them on the ground because I got to clean that up later. I'm just going to throw them in my little bag. All right, so now we've got all that stitching finished all the way around. I'm going to remove my straight pins. And I mentioned that I was going to tell everybody why you shouldn't stitch over straight pins. There's a couple reasons. The first is kind of obvious, that if you sew over a metal piece of material, you could potentially break your needle. But more importantly, the real reason is that you could do internal damage into your bobbin or into your needle uptake system. So it's always a good idea to just simply remove the straight pin before you sew over it. All right, are there any questions as of right now?
None have, oh, I almost spoke too soon.
Okay.
Another comment just dropped in. So Jenna adds that if I go to the decoration route, I can have my son and daughter trace handprints for a turkey shape. So this is a great idea you're talking about, Sue.
Yes. Oh, what a fantastic idea. Oh, I love it. And okay, I'm sorry. What was the name of the viewer that just said that?
Jenna.
Jenna, I want to see pictures. Please tag me at Suki Sews when you do that. That's going to be adorable. And what a great way to involve children in the crafting. I think it's fantastic. Okay, so just to recap, we've taken our two solid pieces with the wrong side. The batting is tucked inside. And then we have stitched around that shape. You'll notice that we also caught that little bottom of the leaf. And then we're going to take the three pieces that are in that pattern shape, that leaf, and we're going to stack them right on top of one another with all of the right sides facing up. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Now, again, the reason that you do 3 is because that is the traditional way of creating the chenille effect. Can you do more? Absolutely. I just don't know that it's truly necessary. And but I wouldn't recommend you do any less. Now, at this point, the next step is to draw a horizontal angle on all of these. Now, let me grab my ruler. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about quilting rulers. There's lots of different rulers on the market. So just when you're picking out a ruler, or go into your ruler stash and check this out right now. But a lot of the quilting rulers will have angles on them. So the one that we're looking for today is a 45-degree angle. If you sew the chenille straight across like this, and our material was cut on the straight grain, it'll still fluff up. But if you do it on a 45-degree angle, it will fluff up twice as much, maybe more. And that's because this material, when the yarns are cut on an angle, it's kind of like, think of it, if it was woven like this and you cut it straight across, you're really only cutting the top and the bottom. But if you cut an angle to it, think about it, you're cutting straight across there, there's going to be more fluffiness. It's such a cool thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to align the side of our straight edge of our solid with the straight edge of the 45-degree. And now when I draw a line here, we're essentially following that 45-degree angle. Isn't that cool? So now we're going to just draw from it doesn't really matter where we start, but I find that if I start somewhere kind of in the middle, I get a little bit, I don't know, it seems to kind of work a little bit easier. So now we're going to draw a 1/2 inch apart of all these lines, and hopefully you can see this. Make sure you can see my lines. And all you're going to do is now take the 1/2 inch that's on your ruler. Now, if you don't have one of these rulers, an easy way to find what a 45-degree angle is, and this is really simple, is you're going to align one of the straight edges to the other. And there's your 45-degree angle. So if you don't have one of these, it's not a problem. So you can even do this with a tape measure or just a traditional, like a school kind of ruler. Now I'm going to rotate my material so that I can just see this a little better. And then we're just going to draw a 1/2 inch apart. Is there any questions?
No, but we do have some more people popping in saying hello. Shirley is new to quilting. Can't wait to try this project. So welcome to Shirley and all of our new to quilting people that are out there. No questions at this time though, Sue. So we're just watching you go.
Okay, very good. Well, you know what? This is a really great beginner quilting project because you're not committing to making an entire quilt or even a little throw or even a table topper. This is a nice, fast way to try out a technique and learn something new. And now, as I think I've mentioned before to you, Leah, that I'm not a traditional quilter. I'm what I like to refer to myself as an accidental quilter. I kind of started quilting here and there, but my primary focus is on sewing and machine embroidery. That's where I spend my crafting time. But I think it's nice to have a little bit of skill in each of the popular hobbies out there. But I saw that you all are having making a cookie tomorrow. I might watch that one because I cook for my family so that they don't die. That's pretty much the only reason why why I make food, so that they don't perish. But but I always like to learn new recipes and things. Okay, so if there's no other questions, now what the next step is to basically sew down all of these lines. And then these lines we'll now refer to as channels. So all you would do is start, now you could, if you wanted, you could put some straight pins here and there just to kind of hold it straight. And the idea is to try and keep all of this within that white outline stitching. But I don't, especially when you're making this the first time, I don't want anybody to worry about like, oh, I went a little bit outside of it. That is not a problem because I've made several of them and not one time was I able to stay perfectly inside the white outline. But what I've already done is I've already stitched this. So like with the magic of TV, I've already got mine stitched. But really you would just take this back to your machine and you would back stitch at the beginning, go all the way to the end, and back stitch once again. Now, I wanted to mention, and then this is in the instructions, I start down the center and then I move my fabric over, I sew the next one, I move it over, and then I just sew from top to bottom, all the way to the end. Then I flip my material around and then I would go to the back to the middle and sew from top to bottom, again, back stitching at the beginning, back stitching at the end, and then go to the next and keep going until you're all finished. So I'm going to put this one away and I'll make another one of these later. But now, with the magic of TV, we have finished this topping. So again, you can kind of see right here, right there, where I kind of got it a little bit out, or the white stitching there is outside of where my leaf is. Again, it's not a problem because what's cool is once this gets washed and dried, you don't see any of that. So now that you've gotten this all stitched and all these channels are stitched together, we're going to go to the next step. So is there any questions right now?
Yes, C actually wanted to know if you use a walking foot for this.
Oh, that's a good question. No, I actually didn't. If I was using I used my Bernette, but if I was using my Bernina, I might have used my dual feet, which is sort of like a walking foot. But I found that working with just my regular basic presser foot was not a problem. Now, for those of you who are not familiar what a walking foot is, it's actually like this big, kind of chunky contraption. In fact, I've got one. I can maybe dig it out, but it's a really cool presser foot. They're quite large, and you put it over your presser foot and the needle bar that goes up and down, and then part of the presser foot goes up and down as well. Now, on a sewing machine, there's little teeth that are underneath your presser foot, like right here, and those are your feed dogs. And for when you're working with thick materials, and maybe like this too, when you're working with thick materials, those feed dogs on the bottom, those little teeth, they help move the material along. But sometimes the top doesn't move along as well. So that's where the walking foot comes in, because the walking foot has teeth on it. And think about it, you got teeth down here, and the walking foot has teeth on it. So now when it's moving the material all together. It's really cool. Maybe the next time I teach a class, we'll do something on a walking foot. All right. Any other questions, Leah?
No, but I will take a moment just to remind anybody, especially if you weren't with us at the very top of the hour, about our chat box. Regina's in here saying she didn't even check out the chat area yet, was too busy watching all the trivet making in action. But if you have a question, if you have a comment, anything that you would like to ask or mention to Sue, go ahead and drop it. It's the blue chat box or the chat on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, I have my eye on it as we go. Sue's really great about pausing and taking questions when she has a chance. So if you haven't checked it out yet, you can check it out now. Even just drop a hello. Let us know where you're watching from. We always love to see the community. So that's all for me for now, Sue. So you can move right on to the next step.
Okay, sounds good. Well, the next step is probably my favorite step of this project. Once you've created your chenille channels, and again, that's all these little stitches, and I'm just going to show this a little closer. We've got all of our 1/2 inch apart channels. And then you'll notice it went through all the layers. And here you can even see I've got my back stitching at the front, and then I got it at the bottom. Once you've finished all that, we are now ready to use our chenille cutter. Now there's a couple of different kinds of chenille cutters on the market, but I have to say this one is the one I've been using lately and I love it. So what is a chenille cutter? Well, first of all, our next step is to cut in between all of these channels, but the idea is that you don't want to cut that solid material. Remember, there's 3 layers of the print. All we want to do is cut through those 3 layers, but not the solid. Now, if you take a pair of scissors, you can get in there, and you might be able to get in there quite far, but there is going to come a point where your scissors just won't get in there deep enough and to cut. You might even be able to get in there, but cut straight. So let me show you what this particular cutter is. It's by Olfa. It's literally called the Chenille Cutter. There are 4 different sides to it. Now, when I first looked at this, I was a little bit overwhelmed. I had to kind of figure it all out, but it's not that bad. It's pretty cool. If you flip it to the side, these little legs, and I don't really know what they're called. I can't remember what the instructions called it, but we're just going to call them little legs. You'll see that this one is about 1/4 of an inch wide. This one's about 3/8 of an inch wide. This one's a little bit bigger than 3/8, but not quite a half. And then this one is a 1/2 inch wide. So the idea is that you would find the one that fits the best into your channels. So I believe it was the size large. And the next thing is, so here we've got, this is the, let me flip around here. Okay, this is the LL, which I'm going to say that's the extra large. The large, I believe, is the one that fit the best. So let me show you what I mean by that. This right here. Yeah, I think the extra large, it fit a little bit, but when I got into it a little deeper, it wasn't as good. So we're going to use the size large, and then all I'm going to do is rotate this so that it's now in that opening. So here, watch right here. Now it's in the small. Now it's in the medium. And now it's in the large. Now, heads up. Oh, okay, there we go. Now, I just want to say heads up, when you go too far, you just got to go back all the way around again. So we're going to go back to the large. And now there's also another turning wheel. It says turn to get new edge. Essentially what's inside here is a traditional rotary cutter, just a circle with sharp all the way around. This is specifically designed for the chenille cutter. So if you cut a lot, you're going to get a lot of gunk in there, a lot of, not gunk, but a lot of yarns and threads. So you might need to clean it off. Okay, so now let's go ahead. We're going to go to that large size. This is the coolest part, my friends. We're going to slip that little foot underneath and we cut. And it's probably so fast you might not have even seen it. Let's do it again. We're going to slip the little foot underneath. And can you see it cutting? See right there? And that's it. And then I'm just going to open this up so you can see I was able to cut super fast and I didn't even have to worry about the solid material underneath there. Is there any questions on that?
No questions at the moment, but I'll keep an eye. This is a fascinating step.
Isn't this the coolest thing? I love chenille. Now, I have to tell you, it takes a lot longer to stitch all these channels than to cut the channels. But, oh man, I wish I need to get my daughter just sewing a bunch of channels just so I can cut them. It's just so much fun. Okay, now, it looks like this particular, I just want to point out something. My channel, this is a 1/2 inch. It looks like maybe I sewed this one a little bit smaller than a 1/2 inch. So in that case, I could just switch to one of the smaller legs. But I was able to get it through there. So I'm working on the large leg and I'm going to just slip through. And now here we go. We're going to go on to the other side. And you see how fast that is though? And oh, now look at that. It looks like I didn't catch one of the layers. Let me just show that to you. I cut 2 of them, but I missed the third one on each of these. So I'm just going to scoop it back in. Yep, and look at that. It just cut. Let me find this one. There we go. And I got two more. Now see, this one's a little bit small. Even though my instructions say to sew a 1/2 inch, I didn't follow the rules right there. So I'm just going to rotate this one to the medium size. And there we go. Cut right through with no problem. Now I wish this would get more yarns in it, but if the yarns get caught into the rotary cutter blade, that's where you can turn it to this side. And I want you to see it's going to stay in the medium leg right here, but you'll see that the rotary blade itself is moving. And that's what turning to the right does. Okay, my friends, so that is the next step, and that's actually, we're almost finished with this project. So if there's any questions, Leah, please let me know.
There are. I'm going to get two in about this tool. So the first one comes from Brenda. Is the cutter guarded to protect little fingers?
I would say that the answer is pretty yes, because if I want to take my finger, I'm trying to see if I can point to this. Yeah, you can see where the blade is. And when you look in here, the distance between the blade and the foot is quite large. Now, if I wanted to get my finger in there, I probably could. So in that case, there is a way when you're turning it to completely shut it off. You'll see right there, now there's no blade exposed. But one more click and the blade's exposed. So just like all rotary cutters, I'd keep them away from little fingers. I've had my daughter's 12 now, but I would say even up until a few years ago, I probably would have kept this out of sight. Any other questions?
Yes, so Roman is joining us from Slovenia, Europe, and Roman wants to know, what is an option to use if anyone out there doing the project doesn't have that specific tool?
Yes, let me just rotate back here and grab another. There's a couple of different rotary cutters that are designed for chenille. This is another one that I used to use. I don't really use this one as much, and I'll say the reason why is because you notice how when I was cutting with this one, I could literally do it up in the air. So I'm not forced to lay it on a flat surface. This one, you're relying on the force of your pressure onto the table when you cut through. And you see how far this extra little, we'll call it the little foot, see how long that foot is? It's great to getting it in there, but it's about 1.5 inches before the blade even begins to cut. So I stopped using this one once I discovered this. Now, if you don't have either of those little rotary cutters, that's where you could use a pair of these like little all-purpose craft scissors or something that looks like it. So it's a short but very sharp scissor point. Another pair that you could use, let me grab my other scissors, would be something like this. These are micro tip scissors, and these are also from my brand, but you'll find something similar to this, or you might have something in your stash that looks like this. It's shorter again, but very sharp. However, like I said, once you get to a certain point of cutting, you're going to find it a little more tricky. And then the disadvantage of using scissors is that you're essentially touching the bottom of that fabric, that solid fabric, and so your scissors might get stuck. But hey, where there's a will, there's a way. If you don't have anything that looks like this, use what you have. But maybe next time you go to treat yourself, if there's a sale on rotary cutters, maybe consider treating yourself to one of these.
All right, I've got one more for you, Sue, and it should take us into going into the final steps of this project here. So Anna is asking if you can use a binding to finish this project. I know you mentioned that this one is finished with raw edges, but for anyone out there that is looking for adding binding, is that possible? Would you recommend trying it? Any ideas?
Why not? For sure. Okay, so the question was, could you use binding on this? I would say yes. I would probably change one step in the instructions. I don't want to confuse anybody what we're going to do, but if you wanted to add binding and you were adding it over top of this wrapped piece, we've got our little leaf stem to be worried about. So what I probably would have done is not added the leaf at this, or excuse me, I would not have added the stem at this section. I would have finished all of this. Actually, I probably would finish the whole thing so that it looks like this. And then I would add the stem right sides together and just maybe baste it and then add my binding. And that way this little guy does ultimately pop out. And maybe I would go the other way, actually. I'm trying to think. If I bound it this way, yeah, it might pop out easier that way. But that'd be the only thing I would do differently.
Okay, well, we'll keep that in mind as you move into these last steps.
Okay, very good. So now the next step is two things. First, at this moment, we're going to try and fluff this up as much as we can. And let's see here. Where's my stuff? Okay, so there are actually chenille brushes that you can purchase. I had one and then I moved once and I lost it. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I never replaced it. I found, and don't laugh, but I found that a toothbrush worked very good. And because we're going to just like rough this material up. And then the other thing I've recently discovered are pedicure brushes. In fact, I really am digging these even more than my toothbrush. So the instructions will mention that you need a toothbrush, and this is what it's for. Now, I will say this. When you go buy your toothbrush, go to the dollar store and dedicate this toothbrush to this technique. Put it in your sewing stuff. And with bristles, when you go to the dentist, my dentist tells me to use a soft to medium bristle, the bristles, but I'm going to tell you, get one that's the hard. Now, that's a problem. When I was at the dollar store, I couldn't find a hard one. I found medium, so I got it, but then I discovered the little pedicure brushes. I actually am leaning toward the small pedicure brush, so just kind of keep an eye out. And okay, so then, yeah, what I wanted to show you though is that I like this one because I can take my fingers and put it inside here and just rough it up. Now my whole table is going to shake now, but that's okay. I want to show you how this really kind of gets it fluffed up. So now let me zoom in here. So take a look at this. See the texture I've just created compared to over here where it's still flat. And that's all you're going to do. So you can use a toothbrush. You can use one of the pedicure brushes. Like I said, I found that I like the small one because the bristles are a little more stiff and they're closer together. Or there are chenille brushes that you can purchase, and they're I'm trying to think. They kind of remind me of something you'd find at the hardware store. They're really metallic-y brushes. So then after you do that, we're going to see, I'm going to use these scissors. So now at this point, you've gotten it roughed up just a little. And now we're going to cut around the outside of all of this. And we want to make sure that we don't cut that stitching that we created earlier on. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut this. If there's any questions, now is a good time to ask.
Here's a good one coming in from Deborah. Deborah's wondering if in a pinch, if you don't have one of the Chenille cutting tools that you were mentioning or scissors that might work, what would you think about wrapping paper cutters?
Wrapping paper cutters. I'm trying to think. As long as they wouldn't cut the bottom solid material, that this edge right here, absolutely give it a try. And if it works, Deborah, tag me at Instagram at Suki Sews. Let me know. I'm definitely a big advocate of give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? Especially if it means you don't have to go buy something that you may not use very often. If you don't plan on using and making more chenille, then use something that you've got. I'm all for it.
Right, that's all the questions I have for right now.
All right. Well, that's good because right now I wanted to point out that this is the part where you want to make sure you're paying attention. So if the kids are saying, Mom, 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 take a break and go ahead and focus on this. You don't want, because what we're doing is we're cutting outside of that white stitching, but you don't want to accidentally cut off your little leaf, right? Your little stem, right? So what you're going to do is fold this one part back and cut just a little past that little stitching, and then flip it over, and then we're going to cut the other side. Now, worst case scenario, let's say that you accidentally cut this off. What I would do is I'd grab my seam ripper, I would rip out just that one little portion, and I would open it up, and I would tuck another little stem inside there. And remember, it's just a piece of ribbon, but that's what I would do. Because it's going to happen to somebody. That's life. All right. Now we're nearly finished here. And when you're all done, we're going to clean off our area. And this is the easiest part. You are going to take one of those mesh bags. And just for the record, I got mine at the dollar store recently, and there was 3 of them for $1. You're just going to open up that mesh bag. It's got a zipper on it. You're going to take your all roughed up leaf. You're going to throw it inside, and you are going to wash it and dry it. Once you take it out, it's going to look something like this. Now, I'm not actually going to wash that right now, so let me take this back out. But I wanted to show you all that when you take it out, just to kind of compare, you can even see how this looks whiter, and that's because the material from the back side of this print is not printed. So that's where you're seeing whatever ink has gone through. But let's just say that it's a lighter version of this. And that's what's fluffing up here. And it gives the coolest, most lovely effect. And now I will tell you that I washed this one twice. And you can kind of see the difference. It gets a little more wavy. I felt like it fluffed it up even more. Now you can go back with your brushes and you can rough it up even more. And again, what this is doing is it's just kind of meshing and waking up the fibers. So that's why you want to do it ahead of time. But once you take it out of the dryer, do it one more time. And then the last thing is to get your ironing. I'm using my little Aliso mini iron. And then once you're all finished, any of the places where you're seeing a lot of that base fabric, you might want to just press that flat right here. So I'm just going to press it and then show you. Now the idea is to have it all fluffy, right? So we don't want to do a lot of pressing, but you might want to just press the sections that you need to have flat. But otherwise, that's it, my friends. That's how you make the chenille leaf trivet.
Well, I would love to throw a couple more questions your way, Sue, and I want to start with Regina's. So Regina and anybody else that wasn't here for the very top of the hour when you were outlining your fabric. So Regina was thinking you were creating a chenille type texture using a different fabric, which is in fact what you have done. So if you could back up and just talk us through the fabrics and tell us how it is that you created that chenille texture as like kind of a Cliff Notes. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. And if you're still looking overhead, I can show it to you because remember, we didn't actually sew all the steps. So what we did was we took that batting and we did use a thermal type batting. We have that thermal batting with the thermal side facing up. That's going to be facing whatever's going to touch the heat. So just remember that. The metal is going to touch the heat. And that metal side, the thermal side, is what's sandwiched in between these two layers. And then we just stitched all the way around, and we did catch our little leaf stem. And then out of the same pattern piece, and let's see, I've lost my cutout pattern piece, but the pattern piece comes with the instructions, and you would just simply cut that out of the 3 printed materials. And then you would take the 3 printed materials that are exactly the same shape as the leaf, and all of those are going to be facing right side up. So they're all exactly the same. Now I got to tell you, what's really cool about this technique is the more interesting the pattern, the more interesting the chenille. So if you're using a chenille that has big, bright, bold colors, it is going to look fantastic when it's all finished. If there are random, like big blotch of colors, it's really going to show up once you do your chenille, once you do this effect. Now, because we've created this fabric, but you'll still notice that it's very subtle. but we're making this for Thanksgiving and we want the fall and all of that. But yeah, you can have a lot of fun with it. The other thing too, Leah, for the viewers, is whatever color you have as your base is really going to show up the more you wash it. So you can you see how we can kind of peekaboo see that color, the rust, the solid. Just imagine if this was like a bright red, or like a yellow. You could really have some different effects. And then one last thing is, if someone was talking about using their kid's hand and making like the shape of their hand, maybe do them this different colors, the base, but maybe use this the same, and then you can have a lot of fun with that too.
I'm going to hop right on what you were just talking about with Martha's comment here. So, if you would like the opposite to avoid that little pressing technique that you showed us, Sue, Martha says it seems like if you use the same background fabric under the leaf, then there would be no need to press. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great idea. And if you wanted it all to be the same, just like what she said, instead of using the solid here, you would use all of them the same material. Absolutely. Now, of course, my idea is to show you all visually. So in instructions, I wanted to make sure that these materials were different so that it really stood out. But yeah, of course, you could use all the same materials. I like that.
All right, and then let's go back to a tool question here next from Bonnie. So you were talking about the toothbrush, the pedicure set. Bonnie wants
Yes.
to know, what about using a cat grooming brush?
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, we have a dog grooming brush. They're just really wide. If you could get a narrow one, like, I wouldn't go much wider. This right here is a good inch. I wouldn't go much wider than that, but maybe an inch and a half at the most. But yeah, that's a good, try it out. Let me know. I think that's a fantastic idea. Because the bristles from a cat grooming brush kind of remind me of the actual chenille brushes that they sell. Yeah, that's a good comparison. They're maybe a little thinner, but very, very, very much the same.
All right, I'm going to give everybody a last minute or so to drop in any more questions that you would like me to ask Sue. While Sue, if you give us a few final thoughts about this project and also where we can find you next, and then I'll let you know any of the questions that trickle in here at the end.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I would say try this technique out. You've got the instructions, and they are going to have that pattern piece. So you've got exactly how I've instructed it. When I'm making something new for the first time, I try and make it exactly as the instructions are, and then I put my designer cap on. So I encourage you. I love to see when you all come up with the next step. Like the viewer was saying about tracing her children's hands. Find different shapes. You could just go and Google Thanksgiving shapes, and I'm sure you'll come up with lots of them. The simpler, the better at the beginning, because you remember when I was stitching around all of the shape of the leaf, it's just a few points. But if you were doing something that was really complex, it may be a little more involved. And two, once it's all washed, you don't want it to lose its structure or ultimate shape. It's kind of like making Christmas cookies. When you have one that's really detailed, it doesn't always come out at the end as detailed. But I would say give it a try. You can find me everywhere at Suki Sews. It's SOOKIESEWS. Find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And we have lots of free sewing tutorials on there that I would encourage you all to come check out as well. Please do subscribe.
All right, Sue. Well, a couple more questions did drop in, so I think we can get to two or three of them before we have to
Okay.
sign off. First, we're going to talk a little bit about fabric here. We have two questions about the fabric. So, which type did you use for the printed and for the background? And then also, does it really matter? Is there anything fabric content that you would warn people away from or recommend to use first?
Great question. So both of these are 100% cotton, which is what I would recommend. I would probably avoid a synthetic material. Um, I will tell you what will do really well is denim, makes really cool chenille, and anything that's loosely woven. So kind of just remember, like, lock your fingers all together. If it's tight, it's going to be a little more difficult to, when you cut it, to, because it kind of blooms, right? The yarns bloom. But if they're a little more loosely woven, they're going to bloom a little better. So I would probably encourage anything that's a synthetic to avoid. Polyester, acrylic, but silk would be really nice. Silk chenille is pretty. Cotton, of course. Rayon. Um, this is a total synthetic. But I have rayon shirts, and think, just kind of put your thinking cap on. If you take the fabric, you cut it on a 45-degree angle, and you just kind of rough it up, how difficult is it to rough it up? If it's easy, that's going to be a really good chenille material to work with.
Okay, and then the final questions are about the batting. So first, if you could
Yes.
just review the type of batting that you used. We've got a couple viewers that have never worked with this kind of batting before, and then just talk about a couple brands that people could look for.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing I want to mention is this is a thermal batting. It means that it's going to protect your hand. There are, when you look at these at the store, it'll tell you how hot it can go up to. I do not want to be responsible for anybody taking this and grabbing a 400-degree pot. I cannot with confidence tell you that it's going to protect it. I will say a lot of times the thermal batting projects will also recommend that you use a second layer of cotton batting. So I found that this worked great as a trivet. It protected my surface when I put something hot on it. I also found that using these as a quick pot holder was fantastic, but I also didn't test it out on like a big turkey roaster. So, maybe just keep that in mind. But the material, it is a thermal batting. There is Insulbright. There is one by Bosel. I think it's called Thermo Batting. I wish I would have had all of this written down. And then there's one by C&T Publishing that has one. There's several. So if you go to a quilt shop, just go up there and say, I want to make something with thermal batting. What you got? If you go to your big box stores like Joann's, go over to the batting department, see if you can get someone to help you. But you'll probably be able to find it yourself because it's going to be the only silver thing. And you'll notice mine has silver on one side, whereas the other side is white. Some of them have silver on both sides, but this is the one that I used, and this one is the Bosel, I believe.
And then sticking with the batting, this is a great question that comes in from Deborah. Is there a concern with placing this finished project into the microwave because of the metal content?
Yeah, this is not a microwavable batting. There is batting that's designed to put in your microwave. This is not it. I believe that one is 100% cotton. You can just tell by looking at this. There is more than cotton in this. It's got a metallic finish to it. So this is to once your microwave's off, it's designed to go in there and pull that hot thing out. It's like you wouldn't put a metal can in your microwave. It's kind of the same thing.
It was a great question. I know that's something that we should keep in mind using materials like that. With
Yeah.
that said, Sue, I am ready to say farewell to everybody. This has been a fantastic project. So once again, I want to give you the floor first, and then I've got a couple reminders for our viewers. So last thoughts from you, Sue.
Oh, well, my last thoughts are I hope you all have a very happy Thanksgiving or any of your gatherings for the holidays. I was really excited to come up with this project and teach it. I hope you learned a few new things, and I would really just encourage you, come follow me over at Instagram and Facebook. I also have a Facebook fan club. I have hundreds of videos on YouTube and lots of free projects so that you can try if you're interested in sewing and serger and even machine embroidery. Please do come follow me. We have a lot of fun, but it is such an honor to be here on Craftsy. I also do have a Craftsy course. I did it about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's all machine embroidery in the hoop gift. So if someone does embroidery and they're wanting to check that out, it was a pleasure to be on the Craftsy platform. And so it's just been really exciting to see you a couple times too, Leah. It's been so much fun working with you and the Craftsy team. Just, mwah, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, it's always fantastic to do a project with you as well, Sue. And I do want to make sure that everybody watching knows if you didn't see the entire thing today, you can always come back to this page, watch the entire thing back. If there's a tip that you really want to watch again or see any of the demonstration that Sue had for us today, you can always come back to this and rewatch it. So don't worry if you missed anything. This will be here for you in the future. And then Sue did mention tagging her on Instagram, but also we would love for you to use the hashtag #ShareCraftsy. It's a great way to collect all of the projects that you're making, not just this week, but of course this week for Craftsgiving, and just be a part of the community. And again, that hashtag is #ShareCraftsy. So tag away on social media when you start to work on these projects yourself. And then of course, remember to join us again tomorrow for our Craftsgiving mini series. Tomorrow we're streaming live with Ann Yorks, and we're going to start at 2 p.m. Central Time. Anne is providing a live demo, and we'll be making a turkey cookie platter. So you can download the ingredients list and all of the free instructions right now using the link in the description before tomorrow's event. And you can also find our entire mini-series schedule in the video description. So until tomorrow, my name is Leah, and on behalf of the entire team, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you soon, and happy crafting.